floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pu Yun Yu. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to TAECT for inviting me to this very prestigious event. I'm very pleased to be here. I must apologize that I am not able to deliver my keynote in Mandarin. I'm not so proficient, but I'll try this introductory about mysel 大家好，我是黄淑鸾，从马来西亚来。今天我很开心见你们。I hope I got that right. Well, anyway, I am here today. I'd like to share with you what happened in Malaysia from a Malaysian perspective before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic. Well, we haven't even actually, pandemic is not over yet. But in Malaysia, it's at the endemic stage. And I want to share with you the experience that we have had focusing at Universiti Putra Malaysia, that's where I am from. How did we actually cope and what transpired, and how do we actually look forward after this stage? Well, this is a 21st century learning environment, pre-pandemic, taking photographs from my classroom. I teach educational technology, which is a compulsory course for all pre-service teachers, and it's taken by students in the 3rd semester, 4th semester, depending on which program they come from. You can see that in this picture here, my students are very active learners, and they are all hands-on, doing hands-on activities. This is one example of how the learning environment looks like. We also teach our students how to do or how to create augmented reality apps where they learn to create tools which they will use for their future classrooms. This is where the students were trying to interact with Winnie the Pooh using the AR apps. So you can see that this is obviously an environment where they are free to sit around, it's very flexible, it's not a very rigid classroom. And this is a picture showing that the students are engaged in a learning activity, but not using any technological tools. Games with cups, this was an activity where I was trying to teach the students about TAECT, technology, pedagogy, and content. So we didn't have this technology tool, but rather just using cups, trying to teach them what do you understand about technology, what do you understand about pedagogy, and what do you understand about the content, which is the subject matter. So this is a group of students who are from the physical education program, and they were very engaged in the learning activities. We also have poster, presentation, and board games. So you can see that from this class, this subject, educational technology, the students are engaged in the learning environment. They are also required to participate in the learning activity. So in this learning activity, the students had to create a poster where they had to present. It was a competition actually. We were trying to nurture communication skills, confidence in the students. The one that you see on the right hand side, where the students have created a board game where they had to use design thinking in creating these board games, a board game that they would be using in future in the classroom. In my university, we have this blended learning where every lecturer is given the opportunity to conduct their lessons 7 weeks face-to-face plus 7 weeks online. So you can have 50% of face-to-face class and 7 or 50% online. So you can have a mixture of 50-50, 70-30, or 80-20, or 100% face-to-face. And before the pandemic, none or not many of the lecturers or the educators actually opted for online learning. We were very comfortable with the face-to-face. So for me, I had opted to do 12 weeks of face-to-face and 2 weeks of online. So our semester spans for about 14 weeks. 14 weeks makes up one semester. So this is what happened in 2019. We had used the online learning environment. This is using the big blue button. and 2020. This was before the pandemic. So my student had been exposed to the use of online learning platform, although it was not widely used in the university at that point of time. Now, then of course, we had COVID-19. In Malaysia, the first lockdown happened on 18 March 2020. So the numbers were increasing in early March. The numbers then, it increased very incredibly. And at that point of time, we heard rumors that there would be a lockdown. And when we heard that officially there was going to be a lockdown in Malaysia was on the 16th of March. So we didn't know what was going to happen at that point of time. We were informed that the first lockdown would be for 2 weeks. So we all thought that, okay, 2 weeks is fine, we are all going home, and after 2 weeks we'll be back on campus. But what happened was, after 2 weeks, we heard another announcement that there would be another lockdown for another 2 weeks. That became 1 month, 2 months, and eventually we all stayed home for 18 months. The students were all not allowed to be in campus for 18 months. We as educators, we were prohibited from coming back to campus. We were not allowed to come back to campus. And if anyone caught coming back to campus, so imagine, you cannot come back to office for 18 months. So the environment just changed, and everybody was really very unprepared for that situation. So, of course, we had to pivot to ERT, Emergency Remote Teaching. Now, during this situation here, of course, we know that the environment from what you see, teaching in the classroom, having face-to-face lessons with the students, it just suddenly changed to being online. But what happened in my university is that the administrators of the university acted very quickly. What happened was, on the 18th of March, we had started 2 weeks of face-to-face lectures already. We were already in the semester, and then it stopped. Everyone was asked to leave campus to go home. Then we all waited for instruction. What would happen? How is it going to be like for the next few weeks? So the university very quickly made the announcement that the semester break would be brought forward. So we had 1 week of buffer, no class, but that gave us enough time for the educators or the instructors to make changes to our teaching and learning activities and our plans. And then very quickly, the university instructed a group of people to come up with a very specific guideline, concrete guidelines. Before these, the university didn't have any clear guidelines. They mentioned about blended learning, you can do online learning and so forth, but there was no clear guideline. What do you mean by doing asynchronous? How many weeks of asynchronous would be considered for your 14 weeks of semester, and 14 weeks of one semester? So these UPM virtual classroom and e-assessment guidelines, so I was involved in this guidelines. We had very little time to work on and came up with this guideline. So I'll show you some examples of what's inside this guideline. So it's a very pictorial kind of guideline, so infographic kinds of guidelines. So this is an example of the role of lecturer in conducting virtual classrooms. What do you need to do and how are you going to do it, for example? So number one, you need to design your teaching delivery using the appropriate elements and applications. Upload your materials related to topic before implementing virtual lectures and so forth. In my university, we have the learning management system, which is called the Putra Blast. I'm sure where you are from, your university would have your learning management system as well. At the same time, with this guideline, which we put together very quickly, the university decided that we must start having webinars, or we call it the CPD. Prior to this pandemic, we have this CPD, which is open all year round to all our educators. You can pick. The calendar would be there, so we have all sorts of webinars that, or at that point of time it was face-to-face. You can pick and choose and attend these trainings. But during this lockdown, they had to turn it into online training sessions. So we came up with this CPD, very quickly, and this is an example of what we call the Online Learning for All program. So I had this honor, I would say, to do the first webinar, which was on the 28th of March 2020. So our lockdown was on the 18th of March. And then we had to identify people who were familiar with online learning environment, how to do your delivery, how to do your assessment online, and I volunteered to do the first one. So 28th of March, which was Saturday, 2:30, I did the first webinar, Effective E-Assessment for our educators. Then we had the second one. So there was very frequent CPD sessions for all our educators. We wanted to make sure that they were going to be ready when the semester or the class would continue. At that point of time, we still had this buffer time. And after the 1 week break, the university said, okay, we still think that the educators need more time. So they gave us additional semester break. So which means that towards the end, the actual semester break was shortened, but the time was put into the early part where this time was very crucial for all educators to be ready to teach 100% online. So at the same time, the challenge for us as educators, we need still to produce knowledge creators, right? And all these would be, how do we challenge our learners? How do we inspire our learners in a totally different environment, not from something from face-to-face to 100% online? Of course, as educators or instructors, we have to redesign our instruction and learning. So instruction, how do we actually deliver that was planned? So we were 2 weeks into the face-to-face, that was all planned prior to that. And of course, we have to change or we have to adapt to the learning environment, which was 100% online. So this is one example of our course package that we had to redo for this course I mentioned earlier, FCE 3401, Educational Technology. It's a compulsory course, and you can see that there are 4 lecturers handling this course. I'm one of the lecturers handling this course. So the COVID-19 pandemic response message, we had to change our coursework to suit the environment. The original coursework required the students to go out to schools to interview the teachers about what types of educational technology would you like to have? What are the challenges that you face in terms of technology for teaching and learning? Of course, during the lockdown, no one was allowed out of the home. So in this situation here, we had to find out first about our students' learning environment. So this is an infographic where we had actually distributed to our students through WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is a social media learning platform which is popular, very popular in Malaysia. I think it's popular here as well. We wanted to understand what kind of, how good is their internet access. So internet bandwidth, we asked the students to inform us, to let us know if you have low bandwidth, medium bandwidth, or high bandwidth. And to help the students understand the context, what do you mean by low bandwidth? It means that you can only use WhatsApp, Telegram. If you have medium bandwidth, then you probably will be able to use the learning management system. And if you have high bandwidth, which is green in color, you will be able to use Zoom platform, the big blue button, WebEx, and so forth. So the one on the right-hand side in green was what I asked the student to respond to me. So the first one, Wong, that's me. I had indicated that these are the tools that I have. I have a PC and I have an iPad, and my bandwidth is high. If you look at these students, so from number 2 to number 16, these are all my students, you will see they are all quite well equipped with the learning tools. They have iPhones, they have laptops. But the problem that they had was the bandwidth. Not many had high bandwidth, which means that using synchronous learning, for example, using Zoom, would be a problem. Now, my university is a public university, and most of the students, they are not, I would say they are from the B40 group. B40 group means that the income is not high income family. And many of them are from the rural areas, which means that the internet bandwidth or the internet access would be a big problem for the students. Getting this information was very vital to my team, to the group of instructors, because we knew that our online learning classroom would not be possible if we do synchronous. We tried using synchronous mode, we used Zoom, but then I discovered that there were students who were coming in and out of my lessons. Not because they purposely did it, but because of the bandwidth. They had problems, big problems with the bandwidth. So understanding the students. So Professor Tu had mentioned about the learning environment. I had asked my students to capture, take a photo of your learning environment so that I can see how is your learning environment. This is your personal workspace. Now if you look at this picture on the upper left hand corner, you would see that this student doesn't even have a chair. Just a small table, right? So I imagine if I were the student sitting on the floor, would not be very conducive if I do a 2-hour synchronous lecture. Some of the students were better equipped, they had proper tables, they had proper chairs. The picture on the right hand side, you can see that's a dressing table, that's not a proper table and chair for them to learn. So that was the context of how the learning environment my students were in during the pandemic. Prior to this, of course, we never asked the students about their learning environment. They're all in campus, right? So when they're in campus, they are in my class, they're very comfortable, we know that they have these laptops, they have their handphones, everything is fine. But the challenge now was they are back at home and I'm also at home. I need to understand their context. How is the learning environment? So that was very important for me as well, knowing that they will not be able to fully concentrate in such learning environment. So the team decided that we can't have synchronous Zoom lessons or Microsoft Teams lessons. We needed to record our lectures. So what we did was we all took a couple of topics. We divided the topics among the 4 of us and we all shared our resources. We were all recording whatever topics that we were all assigned to and we shared all these lectures and put it online and inform the students that this is how we are going to learn. At the same time also, we decided that the assignments that we had given to the students, now the communication was almost zero with the students. Although we had given our handphone numbers to the students and told the students, you can call us anytime, you can WhatsApp, send a message anytime or email, but there were none from the students. The communication kind of like stopped. They were having problems with their personal lives as well. That was something that I couldn't see. We didn't know about that. They had problems with their tools, their laptops. Now they had to share with their siblings when they're at home. They have like 4 to 5 siblings. So they had to share their learning resources as well. At the same time, we all decided that the assignments that we had prepared for our students need to be very clear. What are the expectations of this assignment? And to help the students, prior to the pandemic, we had prepared rubrics for them. But because communication was difficult between us and the students, we decided that our rubrics had to be more detailed so that the students would have a better idea of what is the expectation of this assignment. So we had 3 assignments and 1 final exam. So this is an example of an e-poster rubric, which we had given to the students, but we refined it knowing that this would be more helpful when it is more detailed. So it's a lot of reworking and redesigning whatever that we had prepared prior to the pandemic. So like I said, we had 3 assignments here. The first one is e-poster. You have the second one is the AR development. The third one, infographics. And the last one, our final exam. So we had to redesign the assignments for our students. We made it a little bit easier, knowing that the students were having a lot of stress. The mental stress, the emotional stress of not being able to follow 100% due to all the challenges that they were facing at home. So some of our lessons also conducted through asynchronous and synchronous methods. So this is one example of the WhatsApp class that I had with my students. If you see on the left-hand side, well, this is in the national language. Let me translate it for you. I had given them every week very clear instruction that this is the topic that you are going to be doing for this week. And this is the link that we have recorded for the lectures. So it's recorded in Loom, these free apps that we had. So activity for topic 8, we had given it for that particular week. And each time when we had given them the video lectures, then we made it compulsory for them to complete a learning activity. That's to fortify their understanding of the topic. So it doesn't matter when they actually do it, but they have to do it in order to be able to follow the classroom and the teaching. On the right-hand side is an example of our learning management system. So all these slides were all put online. And they can access it anytime, whenever that is considered as peak or off-peak time. Peak time would be 8 o'clock in the morning, afternoon, then off-peak time would be evening. So my class was during the afternoon. So I would presume that the students will not be able to follow my class because of the peak time. So the bandwidth would be very limited for them. Taking into consideration that they will be actually assessing the learning materials maybe at night or early in the morning, where they would have less congestion on the bandwidth. So this is an example of how I translated my class from a face-to-face to something which was very unusual at that point of time. I felt that there's no way I'm going to teach the class synchronously. So I translated the idea of teaching this topic. If you're familiar with Dale's Cone of Experience, this is one topic in our educational technology class. It's teaching the students about the concept of abstract and concrete. Right? So if you're familiar, the abstract information would be very textual. And you have to imagine what it means. So if it's concrete, then that abstract information is translated into something more concrete, like a photo, a video. That's concrete information. So for this activity that I had with my students, I taught them the concept of Dale's Cone of Experience. At the same time, I had recorded my voice, explanation, very small bites activity, knowing that that would not be a problem for them to download and listen to my voice and my explanation. And I gave them an activity where I had asked them to describe what is a narwhals. So if you are not familiar with the narwhals, imagine that you are my student in the class at this moment. I'm giving you the information which is abstract. So the first information is, the narwhals is the unicorn of the sea, a pale-colored porpoise found in the Arctic coastal waters and rivers. That's the first abstract information. The second abstract information is about the narwhal's tusks. These legendary animals have 2 teeth. In males, the more prominent tooth grows into sword-like spiral tusks up to 8.8 feet long. Then I gave the third slide. So based on these slides, which are abstract information, I asked them to draw the narwhals. So imagine if you are drawing the narwhals based on the information and based on my explanation on WhatsApp, and also the picture of this cone, Dale's Cone of Experience. And this is what I got from my student. The picture on the left-hand side shows the photo. So I asked them, draw it on a piece of paper, then you capture the picture, and then I said, everybody do not post your photograph until I say so. So I said 1, 2, 3, post now. So the picture started to come in, showing me what they had imagined. How did they imagine this narwhal look like? So which means that they were drawing based on the abstract information of Dale's Cone of Experience. And then after they have finished drawing, I showed them a concrete information, which was a photograph of narwhals. I asked them, does your drawing look anything like this? And that's where I get the feedback from my students. So you can see that the students actually really had some fun, although I couldn't see how they were responding. I had been doing this activity in class. So in class, it was very noisy when they started seeing each other's photos, the pictures that they had drawn. It was funny, they found that it was humorous. Prior to that, they were all very focused in drawing these novels. So that was how I translated, or I brought the idea of the classroom activity, brought it into a virtual activity at that point of time. So this is what the students said. This is what let me translate for you. Hampir sama Prof means that it looks quite the same. Hampir sama Prof, tapi macam larilah banyak. Means that it looks quite the same, but I think it's kind of like different. And the last student said, sama dah ni. Sama dah ni is like, it's the same. So you feel that the students are really communicating with me, and they could actually show me that, you know, the emoticons of laughing and so forth. So I could feel that, although I couldn't see them. So during this lockdown period, we had this unexpected opportunity for a case study. We wanted to collect some data to understand more from our students, because all this while, we never had this opportunity because they were all in class. There was nothing to be concerned about. And let me share with you some of the findings. Now, the context of the study, this was an analysis of students' personal experience in terms of the advantages and challenges of online learning during the MCO. MCO is the term that we use for lockdown in Malaysia. Movement Control Order in Malaysia that lasted from 18 March to 3rd May. So this is the time period that we collected the data, but our lockdown continued after that. So let's see that what do they actually learn in this course. So the course description, like I said, is a compulsory course, and it provides students with fundamental knowledge and skills of educational technology. So these students, they come to this class without having much knowledge in educational technology. We have groups of physical education students. We have groups who were actually doing TESOL, which is teaching of English in the classroom. This course is a 2-hour lecture with a 3-hour laboratory session per week. So during the lecture, the students learn about the concepts of educational technology, the theories, the principles, development and practices in educational technology. While the practical sessions, students learn to create instructional media. The practical sessions, we had to do it synchronously, but it was done at night. That was the time when the bandwidth was a little bit less congested. So that was the only solution that we could do, or we could find, in order for us to continue with our lessons. So for the lectures, we had pre-recorded our topics, supplemented with interactions on WhatsApp and intermittent Zoom sessions. So imagine these students, right, they have like registered for 6 to 7 courses. So in one day, they would be assessing using the data plan from 8 o'clock in the morning until maybe 10 o'clock at night. So many of them had problems paying for the data plan. That was also another big challenge that we had during this lockdown. So the objectives of the study was, we wanted to find out their lived experience of students about online learning from home. What was it that they had experienced? What were the challenges, and what was the benefit of learning online? Well, we had 36 students at that point of time who were enrolled in our class. No prior knowledge about educational technology. And how did we collect the data? We had them write some reflections. So through blogs, we asked them to write their experience, to reflect. Every week, you write about how you feel, what was your experience like. We wanted to understand the students, and that's how we captured the information. So they are documented expressions of their online learning experience weekly. They shared with us the feelings and thoughts about learning online during the pandemic. They wrote very long essays, I would say. I think they were trying to express their frustrations, their challenges, and so forth. I had not expected so much from these blogs, but they had shared so much with us, which we felt that was very vital information in terms of how we were going to handle the lessons. So from the qualitative data that we had, we found that there were 3 themes for advantages, and there were 4 themes that emerged for challenges. I'll go through with you each and every of these themes. The first one was flexible learning time. Because of the pre-recorded lectures that we had prepared for our students, the students were able to access the video at their convenience. This was really very useful to our students. So we made this decision based on the information that we had collected from that little survey that I asked them to tell me, what is your bandwidth like? How is the bandwidth like? Is it low, medium, or high? And from there, we decided that we will have to record our lectures. And these are some of the expressions that the students shared with us. Look at the first expression, the first one. I live in a very remote area, which is surrounded by forests and oil palm plantations. These environments exist in Malaysia. They are all from rural areas. They're not from the city. I live in the city. So when you live in the city, the instructor lives in the city, students are living in the rural areas, right? We cannot imagine how is the learning environment like and how bad is the internet access is, because we are not there to experience it. But getting this information from this student makes us realize that this is a big challenge. So this makes it difficult. So this student says that this makes it difficult for me to follow the online lessons. It was not possible. And they felt that we had done the right choice. We made the right choice by recording the lectures to ensure that those with poor internet access can continue to learn. We wanted to make sure that no one was left out of our learning activities, our lessons. We didn't want our students to be disadvantaged. Now, during this period of time, there were students who dropped out from the program, which was very sad. They contacted me and said that I have no choice, but I have to drop out from the program. That is a reality. At the same time as well, the emotions, the students' emotions were also affected. So I'll share with you a little bit on that. The second student said that the internet connectivity was unsatisfactory, but when this problem was overcome, when the lecturers had prepared the video recordings and they were able to follow it at their time that they felt that was convenient for them. So they felt that they could actually rewatch the videos. That was very important for them to be able to follow the lessons. So that's flexible learning time. Whenever that they were prepared to follow the lessons, they would then access the internet. They would access the video recordings. The next one is student-driven learning. High level of understanding of the lessons. They had better control of the learning environment, which we were very happy when we found this out. Take learning into their own hands and gain better insights into the topic. So this student said that the experience gained while learning this course during the pandemic allowed me to be a self-directed learner. I could refer to the recordings for a better understanding. I could also reinforce my understanding by accessing the YouTubes and other related sites. So this was something positive that emerged during this pandemic. Positive learning opportunities. The students had unintentionally acquired new knowledge about digital technologies, which was pretty good, because if it's not because of this pandemic, students would not be familiar with Zoom, with Loom, or whatever apps that we were using. So I had this opportunity also to learn, because I didn't need to use all these apps if it's for face-to-face, right? So we were all learning at the same time, instructors as well as the students. So this student said that my experience learning this course was through online. To do this, my instructor had used various platforms such as Google Meet, Zoom, WhatsApp, Loom. In my opinion, this is the best method for now. And this is a new experience for me, as I have never used them before. I have gained new knowledge through the use of online learning platform. So unintentional learning was something that we didn't expect to emerge back, something very positive from this pandemic. That was the benefits, the advantage. Now let's look at the challenges. Like I mentioned before, the poor internet connection was a big challenge for us. These are undergraduate students. Postgraduate students didn't have much problems because they were mature, they were working adults, yeah? So working adults, and most of them live in the city. But undergraduate students, most of them come from quite poor family background. They had challenges because of many siblings. They have to share their bandwidth, they have to share their learning tools and so forth. So this student said the main issue is the weak internet connection since I live in a rural area. The Wi-Fi connection at home is always unpredictable and this makes it difficult to follow the online lessons. We also have students who had to drive to the city out from the rural areas. But of course it was a lockdown. There were police roadblocks. We couldn't even leave our neighborhood. That was how strict it was. It was very stressful at that point of time. I remember that I had to bring my father for his medical checkup. I couldn't go to pick him up because he lives in a different district. So how do we actually manage that? So it was very stressful at that time. The emotions were high, running high at that point of time. The lack of interaction with instructors and other students. So like I mentioned, yeah, the communication ceased. So even if you have face-to-face communication, face-to-face physical class with your students, that would actually kind of make it easier for them to come talk to you after class, to see you in your office, yeah? But when there is no communication, you don't see them physically, the interaction was virtually zero. So the learning process was hampered. So in this situation, this student said that I don't have the opportunity to have face-to-face interaction with my instructor and friends. Online learning makes it hard to ask questions and discuss. The second student says that focusing on the lessons is a great challenge, yes. Although they have internet access, but focusing during this online lesson was difficult. The chances of losing focus are high because I only face electronic gadgets. No one else around the student. Being in such a condition makes me sleepy and I tend to do other things, so they're distracted. So most of the time, it's either, if we have this Zoom session, which I decided I didn't want to do it after the first or second tries, I don't see the students with their video camera on because of the bandwidth. We switch it on, they will be disconnected. So when I don't see them and they kind of like are free to do whatever that they want, so they lose focus in that sense. Poor self-control is another problem. Distractions at home. Like I mentioned, yeah? So this student said, when being at home, I would watch TV shows. I also like to cook, and because of that, many of my course assignments were not completed. So they get distracted, doing something that they shouldn't be doing, all right? So that was the reality that my students were having. So you see that this one, unconducive learning environment, privacy and uncomfortable physical learning spaces. My house has only one room. I don't have privacy during lessons. The place where I learn is near the television. It's impossible to focus. When I learn online, my family members will be walking about and this distracts me. And this is something very real among students. They don't have the privilege of having your own personal room, your own table and chairs and so forth, comfortable place with air cons for them to learn. Imagine sitting in this very hot environment. You have classes from morning till night, right? So it's a very challenging situation for the students to be in. Feelings of helplessness and burden. This student expressed it, finding it difficult to balance between studies and family responsibilities. So for this student, my family didn't fully understand my responsibility as a student, and I was torn between my studies and responsibility as the eldest daughter. So when you are the eldest in the house, you're expected to help. Take care of your younger siblings, to help to prepare lunch, do the house chores and so forth. I'm often in a dilemma. Which do I prioritize first? Is it my studies or the house chores? I have younger siblings who are often noisy at home. Sometimes I lose focus on my studies and feel stressed out. So the emotions are running high here. I really miss being on campus where I could only study, where I could study calmly. So the ideal environment is no more there for the students. And we as educators have to understand our learners. Who are our learners? Like what Professor Du mentioned. So that was how the learning environment was during the lockdown. It was very hard. Even me, as the educator, it was stressful. Although I'm not a student, I'm the one who is teaching. Because I have to handle my family as well, right? And you have to make sure there's enough food on the table. You have to go marketing. And at that point of time, Malaysia at one point of time, they said that only one person can do marketing. No two person. So I sent my husband out, and of course, he didn't know what I wanted. I said ginger, I said 1 kilo, buy some ginger, and he will just message me, is this what you want? Is this what you want? And that's how life was for us. So that was during the pandemic. Then we transitioned into the endemic stage on the 1st of April 2022, this year. So when we transitioned to this period of time, the conditions loosened. Students could come back to the campus, so we had students coming back, so we were allowed to go back to work at that point of time. But there were still restrictions. Students who were from programs that didn't have a lot of practical sessions or hands-on activities, like for example, if you're not from the medical faculty, you're not from the engineering faculty, our students were encouraged to be online still, although they have come back to the campus. So we were still having to deal with teaching online. So our university at that point of time said that, okay, budget is a problem in the university. The funding has to come from your own faculty. So my faculty had then decided that they will transform some traditional classrooms with some tools. So we had 11 existing classrooms that were equipped with basic video conferencing facilities. We had this 350-degree camera, which was mounted on the ceiling for 11 classrooms. And we're adding more classrooms now. We have this cordless microphone, and we have the amplifier. So this 350-degree camera is not automatic. It doesn't follow your voice. You have to control it. So at least it was something that we could use in the classroom. And I decided that, well, the opportunity arose. I had the equipment in the classroom. I will then try hybrid flexible classroom, HyFlex. HyFlex has been around for many years. It was introduced here by Professor BT, if I'm not mistaken, who introduced this idea even before pandemic. So it's a very interesting concept where a student directed multimodal learning experience. It's different from hybrid classroom, a little bit different in the sense that if hybrid means that the lecturer said, okay, all of us are going to do our class online. So everybody goes online. If you say, okay, for this week we are going to do physical, then everybody will be physical. That's hybrid. But HyFlex, your students are given the freedom. You choose to be in class or you choose to be online. Your choice. I tried this model. And I thought that it was really very interesting because it combines face-to-face and online learning at the same time. Lessons are offered in person. So I was in class. And I told my students, you can join my class either online or you can come to my class physically. I gave them the choice. And I collected a little bit of data. This one was done on a group of postgraduate students. Very small class, 8 students. This was a compulsory course, here EDT 5000, Instructional Design for Masters and PhD students who enroll in this class. So this was the combination that I had for my students. 14 weeks, combination of face-to-face, online, asynchronous. The first week, I wanted to see them face to face. They all said, Prof, we want to be in class. We want to come to campus. We have not set foot in campus. They were all in the first semester when the pandemic started. So they wanted to feel the campus vibes, you know, the energy from the campus. And I said, okay, let's have the first face-to-face class, the first week. Unfortunately, one student contracted COVID. Was not able to join us. So I said, we have to do HyFlex. So that student, one student, followed us online, but the rest came. So I had 8 students who were enrolled in my class. So 1 online, 7 in class. Yeah? So this is how it was done. So we had 2 weeks of face-to-face, 3 weeks of asynchronous, recorded lectures using Loom. Another 3 weeks which was fully online, and we had 6 weeks of HyFlex, which means that the students had this opportunity. Either you want to be in class, or you can join me virtually. So this was how the classroom looked like. So I had a student who was following online, so students following class remotely. And the picture on the bottom there shows that the students who were in my class. We had this camera which was mounted at the back of my, the top on the ceiling. And to make sure that students who were joining me virtually, right, they could only see me, but they couldn't see their friends. They couldn't see the learning environment. And we didn't have extra camera. So what I could actually do was to switch on my handphone and put it on here so that I could actually capture the students in my class. So the picture at the bottom shows that this is what the students will be able to see if they are not in the class virtually. Not in the class physically. So this is how it was arranged. So you see that the circles in red are the remote students. In-class instructor, that's me. In-class students, which are green in color, right? So the picture on the right-hand side shows that I have the camera on the ceiling, which only shows me. At the same time, I have my mobile phone camera at my rostrum here, so that the students who were at home could see their friends. They were able to connect with each other through chat, which was Zoom. We were using Zoom at that point of time. They could see each other, they could hear each other. Okay? So that was how the situation was like. Let me check the time. Okay. So I'm going to go very quickly. So these are some of the data that I collected. The attendance for HyFlex model. Although I had given them the opportunity to be in class or not to be in class, you see that there are a total of 8 students. For week 1, I had 1 student who contracted COVID. He wasn't able to come for class. 7 students were in class. Week 4, week 9, week 10, 11, and 12. All the weeks, I had students in my class, although they were having this option of not being in class. I also asked them about their preference. Complete in-class face-to-face, and as well as what's their preference for HyFlex. You see, for complete in-class face-to-face, the students didn't quite like it. They didn't really prefer it. For HyFlex, the majority of them said yes, they prefer it. 6 out of 8. I also asked them about the traditional classroom learning. They felt that they learned better in the HyFlex learning environment, which was good. And they also, compared to the traditional teaching methods, the HyFlex teaching approach provided me with more interaction opportunities with students and teachers. The majority of them also agreed, 6 out of 8. The HyFlex teaching approach enabled me to learn more efficiently. Yes, they agreed. The instructor was able to give adequate attention to the students. They felt that they were given attention. So I had to remember that I have students online, and also I have to remember, of course, I know the students were in the class physically. And these are the students' responses, yeah? If you had chosen to attend sessions remotely when classes were conducted physically, explain why you choose to do so. So I wanted to know, why did they go for this option? So these are the responses that I received. I'll just go very quickly through. The students felt that advantage will be remotely is less exhausting. I had students traveling 60 kilometers to come to class. So sometimes they felt that it was too tiring for them. This one, I asked them, if you had chosen to attend session physically, when you had the opportunity to attend remotely. Let me read one example. This student said, the second one, the advantage of physically is that I can see the reactions of lecturers and friends up close. Now, coming to the end of my talk here, lessons learned. What did we learn from this whole pandemic and as we transition into the endemic situation here? Number one, adaptive policy making. Quick decisions have to be made and to adapt to the context of what we were all facing at that point of time. Continuous professional development. We had many webinars that we prepared for our educators. Asynchronous and synchronous learning approach is good. So you find your balance. Learner characteristics, you have to know who are your learners. What kind of bandwidth do they have? What kind of tools do they have with them? Student-instructor connections. How do you actually reach out to your students? Do you make an effort to reach out to your students although they are so quiet? Set clear expectations. What do you want the students to achieve and what they need to do to complete this course successfully? Low and high stakes assessments. Make sure that you give them assessments, you give them learning activities, but you don't have to grade them all the time. That's very stressful for your students. So just give them activities that they are not graded, but at the same time they are also activities that are graded. And use resources efficiently, like what we did. We recorded our lectures, we shared it among our colleagues so that we don't have to do it all on your own. So what we are having here now, a better normal. I believe that after what we have gone through here, the students and instructors will have more options on how, when, and where teaching and learning takes place. So I'd just like to share this reference. It's actually in the slide I have already shared with the Secretariat, yeah, where I had also referred to some of the materials here. So I think that's all for today, for my talk, and I thank you very much for your attention, yeah, and I am very grateful once again to be invited to speak and share my experience with you. Thank you very much.